Welcome back, everybody. This is the second video in Module 3. We just got done creating a dot density map. So now we're actually going to do a totally different type of analysis called points and polygon. I'll explain that as we walk through it. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a choropleth map that shows which countries have the most airports. And sort of to do that, we're going to need to download a new type of data. But first, before we do that, make sure you have the countries shapefile pulled up into QGIS. You'll see it on my screen. What we need now is airport data for all worldwide airport data. Fortunately, Natural Earth, that same website that we use to get these countries shapefile, also has a shapefile for airports, locations across the world. And that's a shapefile as well. So let's go ahead and go to the Natural Earth website. I got it pulled up right here. Go ahead and type this into your browser, or if you want to go look at the module tools, you'll see a link to it there. But yeah, you should go to the downloads page. You should see this screen right here. Go ahead and go up to large scale data and hit cultural. Go ahead and scroll down just a little bit till we get to the airports. Go ahead and download the airports. All right, and once that's done, go ahead and open it up, unzip it like we did with the countries, get it into the directory here, and open the shapefile. You may need to go to add layer, add vector layer, and find it on your machine. I have it set up on mine, so if I just double click on a shapefile, it automatically opens it up in QGIS, which you should definitely set up. It's really nice. Or you can also drag it into the layers panel as well. So there's a couple different options there. So once we get the airport data pulled up, you'll see it here. We've got dots all over the world, which is the locations of airports. We also have our country shapefile still in there. So what we're going to do, the first step we're going to do is what's called a points and polygon analysis. And the idea is we're going to take polygons, in this case the shapes of countries, and we're going to see how many points, in this case airports, are within that polygon. So what that's going to do is it's going to tell us how many airports are in each country. So it'll make a little more sense as we go through it. So go ahead and go up to the vector menu button at the very top that we were using before, but instead of using research tools, we're going to actually go into analysis tools, and we're going to go to count points and polygon. So go ahead and click on that. The polygons are going to be the countries, like I said, which is already pre-populated, which is really nice. If you had lots of polygons, you might have to load it into QGIS. You might have to select it here, but it's already got it selected here. You also notice that my San Marino shapefile is still in there, so don't select that. Go ahead and select the countries, and then the points is going to be the airports, which is that shapefile I just added. And then these are these are all optional fields. I wouldn't worry about these right now. Go ahead and hit run in background. And you will see, if you're looking around here, you'll see a new color. Go ahead and close out of that, and we'll see what's going on here. So what happened is we created a new shapefile. And this shapefile looks very similar to the, well, it looks exactly the same to the country shapefile that we had before. If you toggle it, you'll see it looks exactly the same. But there is a piece of data added to this that will be helpful for creating this choropleth map. And in order to see that, go ahead and click on this new layer, which is called count. Go ahead and right click on that. Go ahead and go to open attribute table. And go ahead and go to the far right again, and you'll see this num points. So num points, and you can change this if you want to go through the process and change num points. Num points is the default. But what num points represents in this case is how many different airports are in this particular shape. And again, the shapes are representative of countries. So what it did is it looked at the United States, for instance, which is this very first line at the very top. It saw that there were 133 dots within the shape of the United States. And again, the 133 dots represented airports. And it went ahead and added a new column onto the sheet and added the value for the United States as 133, representing the amount of points within that polygon. And then you can see India is number 2 here. I'm going to scroll over to the left here. India is number 2 here. You can see there's 50 airports inside the boundaries of India. And then you can see, you can keep on working your way down and see the other values as well. So that is the first part of this, and it turned out well. It did exactly what we want. Now we're ready to create a choropleth map showing which countries have the most airports. And we can now do that because we did the points and polygon analysis. We've got the number of points inside the polygons representing the airports, and now we can go forward and actually color it based on that value. So go ahead and close out of that attribute table. And we're going to do a process that should be pretty similar to you. We did it in Module 2 to make a choropleth map. We're going to do the same process. We're just going to pick a different column name at this time, which is the num points column instead of the fertility rate we were looking at before. Okay, so for the next step, we're actually going to create the colors for the map. So go ahead and right-click on the count shape file that's been created, and go ahead and click on Properties. And go back to the Symbiology. You might remember this from before. Go ahead and click on that Symbiology layer over here. Go ahead and click on Gradiated again. And for the column, this time, instead of the fertility rate we're going to be looking at, that we looked at in Module 2, we're going to go to num points, which again is representative of the airports. So go ahead and click on that. And we're going to do a very similar process that we did before. We're going to go to Classify. We're going to see automatically generate this sort of key for us in these buckets, which is nice. Just like I said before, I didn't think red was appropriate for fertility rates. I don't think it's really appropriate for airports either. So let's go ahead and change that to a blue. Make sure you select second color and then blue. Hit OK. Hit OK. So first color is white and the second color is blue. You can, and I kind of accidentally did that for a second, but you can change that color, the color 1 if you want. It might get a little confusing and be hard to read, but no, that is an option. Usually the best bet is to start with a white and end in some sort of dark color. In this case, we're going to use blue. So go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and make the number of buckets 6. So go ahead and hit classes 6 and hit OK. And now we have a choropleth map showing countries. The dark blue represents countries with lots of airports, and then the white countries are fewer airports. And I actually have India selected over here, so I'm going to go ahead and select off of that so you can see. So there we go. There's our map. So you can see the United States is in dark blue. You have India over here that's a little bit lighter. You also have Canada a little bit lighter. A lot of white here. I will show you one other option you could do for this map. Go ahead and right click and go back to Properties and go back to Symbiology. There is this mode right here. When it comes to picking the buckets, you can play around with that a little bit. I'm not going to get too much into it, but you can see it will change the buckets, the values in each bucket, depending on which mode you select. So depending on what you're trying to do, maybe natural breaks is a little bit better. This data set's a little hard because you have the United States, who has almost 3 times as much airports as the next country, which is India. So the buckets can be hard to distinguish between some of the middle values because you have such a high value. So if you do natural breaks, you might get a little bit better options. Go ahead and apply that. You'll see that there's much more blue on the map. What it did is it took basically 50, and so that would be India, which would be the second country on that list, and anything above 50, which would only in this case be the United States, and gave them the same color. That way you get much more variance between 50 and 0, and then you can actually start seeing some of these other countries as well. It's not always the best idea to go that route. It can be a little misleading. I mean, if there is a country that has a lot more of one thing or whatever you're trying to represent, you definitely want to make sure that that's very clear that that country has a lot more than the other country, whatever you're mapping. But in this case, I kind of like this just because it does get a little more variance with these countries. But if I were going to publish this, I would definitely make note in the text or in some sort of little box outside of the United States, just saying, okay, they have 133 and then the second is 50, just so people can get an idea of the scale that's going on here. Okay, the last thing we're going to do real quick here is just save what we've done. So go ahead and go up to the counts layer within our layers panel. Go ahead and right click on that. Go ahead and hit export, save features as. Go ahead and hit these little arrows here, find a directory. Make sure you find a directory and it's not trying to save in some random place. You may not be able to save it depending on where you're trying to save it. I've got a little directory set up for this course. You can save on the desktop or whatever you want, but just make sure you find some sort of directory to save it in. And then I'm just going to call it countries, airports, PIP, which is abbreviation for points and polygon. You can spell it out if you want. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit OK. And it saved it. And it actually made a new layer in our layers panel as well. So that's the save version. So going forward, if you want to manipulate that particular shapefile on your file system, that's where you're going to need to want to edit. You'll also notice that the colors don't transfer over to it. The chloropleth map we created doesn't get transferred over there. I'll show you how to export that in the last module, but right now it just saves the shapes of the countries and the data, which in this case is the airports for all of the countries. So that's it for this video. We got one more analysis that we're going to run as the last portion of the hands-on portion in module 3. So be sure to check it out. Thanks.